Hello there, welcome back to BCP. It's me, Claire, your host. Unfortunately, Emma can't be with us this week as she's come down with a bit of a nasty case of the flu. I'm sure you'll join me in wishing her a speedy recovery. So today we're going to be talking about just a couple of our favourite places. That's because they've got quite a good history and I don't want the video to go on forever. You don't want to listen to that. Also, I just want to put in a little disclaimer. I know it's going to seem hard to believe, but I'm actually very new to this and very new to editing. I know, you can't believe it, I know. So please bear with me. We do live and learn every day, and hopefully the more of these videos I do, the better I'll get. So, at the risk of sounding terribly British, enough chit-chat, it's time to start with the Ostrich Inn in Slough. Now this is where Emma and I first met, so it's technically the birth of BCP. The building itself dates back to the 14th century. Now initially this was owned by John Jarman and his wife. They are widely known as the first British serial killers, and their story actually, some say, was the basis for Sweeney Todd. Whether or not we believe that, I'll leave that up to you. So what would happen is weary travellers would come into their bar and they would sit down and the couple would assess them from behind the bar, see how much money they've got, see if they look like they have lots of, wealth by the way they're dressed, by the way they speak, etc. And then once they've established if it's worth it or not, they'll just ply them full of alcohol until they're absolutely wasted and they need to pass out. And once they do, they take them up and they very kindly put them to bed in what was called the Blue Room. Once they were asleep and they were happy that they were all tucked in for the night, the Jarmans would flip a switch and a trap door would open in the Blue Room. The bed would come upwards and the person in the bed would slide out down through the trapdoor and into a pot of boiling water where they would drown in the boiling water, which is absolutely horrendous, just the thought of that. Ugh, no. So this allegedly is what happened. Again, it's such a long time ago, it is open to some interpretation. Now, again, initially it was believed that there were over 50 victims, maybe as many as 60, over the several years until they were caught. Now, the last victim was a gentleman called Thomas Cole. He lived in Reading in the UK, which is where I'm currently sitting. And they got caught, I should say, because someone noticed Thomas Cole's donkey wandering around. It was found by the locals. Now, I'm not sure if I'd recognise a particular donkey if I saw one, but I guess, back then, I don't really know. Anyway, the Jarmans were caught because of this. The locals went in to see where Thomas was, only to find that he was missing. The Jarmans would dump their bodies. Once they had taken everything they wanted, they would dump the bodies in the local brook, also known as a stream. Seen upstairs in the events room. Emma and I actually witnessed that ourselves. Footsteps on the carpet in multiple pictures. Not our pictures, unfortunately, so I can't show them to you. In the female toilets, there was a real feeling of being hung by the neck. I believe personally that the lady of the pub wanted us to feel what she was feeling. There are multiple energies in the Blue Room to the point that I actually couldn't stay in there for very long. There's a video around somewhere of me noping out of the room quite quickly. It is also reported that the original owners, the Jarmans, still tend bar in the pub itself. Drinks get spilled, glasses get broken or thrown. People will get touched or pulled while they're eating their meal or drinking their drinks. So it's a very active pub. Now, again, some people say that this is all hearsay, that this is all speculation, it didn't happen. All I can say is when I went there with Emma, I definitely felt presence there and I definitely felt a lot of pain, a lot of anguish there. So I'll leave that for you to decide for yourselves. So moving on, BCP favourite, and actually it's the place that our lovely Emma got married last year, and it is called Shaw House in Newbury. There is allegedly a woman in white, but we'll get to that a bit later on. Now I'm going to be giving you quite a few dates on this one, only because I feel that it is relevant. Because if you see the dates and you see the different people that have owned the building, perhaps it will make it a little bit more understandable as to why it is the way it is. It dates back to 1554 when it was owned by Thomas Dolman. In 1622 it was passed on to Humphrey Dolman, and in 1666 Sir Thomas Dolman III owned it. They made their money in the cloth industry. Originally they bought the property for £600, which in this day and age would be 164 million. Whew, quite a lot of money. It would continue to be owned by the Dolman family until 1774. Now in 1728 it was taken over by the first Duke Chandos. I hope I'm saying that right. I might not be, so apologies if I'm not. And in 1744, Henry II, the Duke of Chandos, took over the establishment. Now, between 1751 and 1843, there were quite a few different owners between the Farquhar, the Andrews and the Penrose family. So as a member of the family would die, the property would get inherited onto the next one, bought by someone else, given back. There was quite a bit of building tennis going on between the families during that time. Now, in 1643, the building itself was actually requisitioned for the military during the war, and it actually did get burned down. Well, obviously, there was some of it left to rebuild, but the majority of it was gone. In 1943, it had been rebuilt, and it was a temporary school by Newbury Council, and then made into a permanent school called St Gabriel's in 1945. Now, we're getting a bit closer to modern day now. In 1949, the Berkshire Council actually bought the building, and it was taken over from them by the West Berkshire Council in 1998. They began restorations on the building in 2003. They wanted to be able to open it up to the public. It is actually a National Trust building now, so it can't be damaged, it can't be destroyed. It is looked after by donations from the public, and that's how they managed to restore the building. And then in 2006 it was reopened to the public. You can go in now, as I say, it's open for weddings and other events that you can hire it for. You can also go in just for day visits, school trips go there, and you can get a tour around the building. It's many different rooms. It is also opened up for ghost hunts, which is obviously how Emma and I came to know the building. And we decided that we were going to organise our first group event, and needless to say, on the evening we were a little bit nervous. It's the first time we'd actually conducted an investigation with other people. We all gathered in what is now the canteen area, and before the guests started to arrive, we were informed by the caretakers of a secret room that no paranormal investigators had been allowed access to. This was called the bakery. Now, what they did, they opened a trapdoor, and there was a vertical metal staircase, which was, I think, more terrifying to me than any paranormal experience I may have had. Finally managed to pluck up the courage to go down the staircase itself into a large room, and it was bricked all around the side, and it had kind of a sand on the floor. You could see recesses in it where fire had been burning, and you could see where the bakery was and where the baking took place. It was myself, my daughter Chloe and Wayne, our tech guy, that decided to brave the area. And literally as soon as we got in there, we started to get actual intelligent conversation. Now, we turned the spirit box on. I was definitely feeling something down there, as was Chloe, my daughter. So we turned the spirit box on. We started asking the generic questions that every paranormal investigator asks. Is there anyone there? Can you tell me your name? How many of us are in the building? Can you tell me my name? You know, the tick list of every paranormal investigator. When we said who had owned this building, well, we got an interesting reply, and I'm going to play that for you now. Who owns this property? Who owns this house? Then we asked a little bit more information, and we got the following response. Is there a woman present with us? Is there a woman present with us? Because the radio sweeps at such a high rate, you wouldn't be able to actually make any words out. If it did come through, it would be very garbled. So what we look for is a word or a sentence that spans over several radio stations. Okay, so once we got that, you can imagine we were quite excited by that piece of evidence to start with. Anyway, we took some pictures, and you can see one of those now. Now, orbs are mostly discounted by paranormal investigators. Sometimes we'll look at orbs and we get quite excited by them because you can tell when it's a piece of dust. It tends to float to the floor gently. Also, it's quite transparent. When it's a bug, you can make out wings usually. But sometimes, like in this picture for instance, there is a very, very bright glow. It's also huge. It happens to be just over Chloe's head, and Chloe was the one that was being talkative earlier and got the responses that we did. So we find that quite compelling, and when you actually zoom in and look at it, you can see that it's quite solid. It's very bright, like almost like electricity, and it has a centre to it, almost like a nucleus. So we find those quite interesting. Sometimes we get different coloured ones, and again they're all quite compelling because that tends to not be dust or bugs. But a lot of these things are discounted, and it does have to be particularly interesting for us to even consider that it might be spirit. This one did grab our attention when we saw it when reviewing the photographs. Anyway, after this, we tried to get back up the stairs again. I was not loving that at all, but we got up there eventually and our guests started to arrive. So we broke off into little groups and did experiments in each of the rooms. And at one point, Emma and I actually broke off. There's a tunnel that runs underneath Shaw House that goes to Donington Castle. Now, at the moment, there are metal gates at either end, solid metal gates. And other people aren't allowed down there. This is quite low down, so there's no radio channel, there's no kind of Wi-Fi signal at all down there. So we went down there, we used our DVRs and we started to call out, and this is what we got. Now, what's really interesting about this is that I think you'll agree that there is the sound of a woman screaming or calling out. Now, allegedly, years and years ago, a servant was actually killed in that tunnel. The tunnel collapsed on her and crushed her to death. So it is thought that she does still wander the area. Now, we weren't aware of this actually when we went there initially. A lot of the information isn't put online. A lot of the stuff that you will read is false. The reason they do that is so that when people come and they say, oh, I've seen that or oh, I heard that, they'll know if it's something off of the website and they know that it's not true. Whereas if you come along and you have something a bit different, they will then check it against what they know, and that's how they can guarantee whether or not it's a true story or if it's just being made up. We did have a similar incident ourselves. We were very excited by the information that we got down in the tunnel. We then rejoined our group and did a bit more group activity. We do that everywhere. Anyway, at one point we were stood at one end of the main hallway. If you look down, you can see a big open door and you can see a big staircase, a big wooden staircase. So I was just randomly taking pictures of the staircase. And then when we got home, I was reviewing the photographs, and the first thing I noticed was something very bright. So I zoomed in and I saw what 100% I believed to be an orb, because I was able to see it from several feet away, the other side of the room to be specific. So I zoomed in on that and I thought, brilliant, that's great, excellent, I'll show Emma, that's lovely. And then I looked up and I thought I saw something else. After looking at the orb though, something caught my eye and I looked up. I zoomed in a little bit closer and I saw something that I thought resembled something in particular. I won't say now what it was. Also, it could have been pareidolia. Pareidolia is where you look at something and you can see faces. So you might look at your net curtains and see a face in it. You might see a particular pattern on a carpet or on a sofa and see pictures in it. So that sometimes can happen, which is why it's always good to have someone else's eyes on a picture as well. I spoke with Emma and a few other people and asked them to take a look for me. And they all said they could see the same thing. And what it appears to be is a woman in a long white gown. Now, looking at the picture, where her head is, it's in the bottom right corner of the window. You can see an obstruction, which is where I believe the head of the figure is. But based on that, the figure would have to be at least 7 foot tall if they were actually standing on the stairs. So we take that to mean that you know, that the person was actually floating. Now what's interesting about that is back in the 15, 16, 1700s, the staircase was actually raised, so the person walking, the level, their head would be the level of the window, which again is quite interesting. So what I did, I circled that image that I believed, and we showed it to a few of our friends on social media. Some came back and said, oh, we can see that, it looks like a woman in a long white dress. Others came back and said, no, we can't see a thing. So I went back in and I actually just outlined the picture that I believed that I could see, and it did look more like a woman in a white dress. Now I'm going to have people say, oh, I was just drawing it and putting the image in people's heads, and that's fine. People will say that, and I respect their opinion. However, I stick by what I've seen, and I really believe that it was a woman in a long white gown walking up those steps, backed up by the fact that there was an incredibly bright orb underneath as well. So we went back to Shore House and we went to the current owners and caretakers, and we explained what we found, and they were both quite shocked, because there is actually a woman in white who is known to walk up and down that staircase. That's not information that they'd actually released to the public or in press. So they were very impressed with that, and when they saw the picture they were quite shocked. So once again, that was some evidence that Emma and I were very proud of and proud to have attained. As I say, you can take our evidence with a pinch of salt. Not everyone is going to believe what they can see, and we're totally fine with that. We do it for ourselves, basically. We look for these things. We hope to find things. We hope to sense and experience things. And if we do, it's amazing. And if we don't, we've tried and we've had a good time doing so. So I'm going to leave it there. So there will be a future video, because there are 2 or 3 locations left that I would like to share with everyone, as they are absolutely incredible locations. And hopefully you will get to see them one day yourselves. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about these haunted locations? Real? Fake? Is it somewhere that you'd like to visit? Would it be somewhere you'd like to visit alone? Please let us know in the comments section down below. While you're there, if you could please like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so that you never miss a future upload. Thank you for joining me today. I will speak to you all again very soon. If you can hear a bell in the background, that's my cat scratching his collar. So speak to you all again soon, and stay spooky.